Welcome to the 2016-17 Wrestling Rules Online Clinic. This is the first year we'll be online. Hopefully for years to come we'll continue to be online so that you can watch these clinics on your own time and in your own homes. My name is Charlie Winsky. My email is charlie@schsl.org. My cell phone and office phones are there for you. Please feel free to call my cell phone if you can't reach me at the office. Just ask that you please be respectful of the time of day and not call late in the evening or early in the morning. All your information you'll need online is covered on this slideshow is www.schsl.org. And anything for the National Federation is at NFHS.org. And of course your coaches and officials online videos are at www.nfhslearn.com. All your information can be found at one of those three websites that we're going through. The only information for wrestling would be your track wrestling, which would track your weight management program. Some general reminders to coaches. Head coaches, please make sure that you take time before the season gets started to have conversations with your assistant coaches. Take time throughout the year to remind them of what their duties are, what their duties are not. I know that there are times where your assistant coaches may be responsible for certain weight classes. At the end of the day, though, the head coach is the one who should be approaching the table. The head coach is the one who should be, if there's any question for an official, asking those questions. An assistant coach's job is not there to dispute calls by the officials or to question anything that goes on during the match. The only person the assistant coach should question to would be the head coach. So please make sure we understand what those duties are before we get started. Please go to our website for any concussion management information. Example, the 5 approved healthcare professionals who are to diagnose concussion or not. There's also a return to play protocol for concussions. I just want to remind you, do not take chances with an athlete's health, not only for the concussions, but also with your skin checks and your skin diseases. If you question as a coach, then don't put the potential of winning a match over the health of all the other contestants involved in those matches. Just do the right thing, and when in doubt, sit them out. The approved healthcare professionals, and this is important for you all as well when it turns into checking skin checks. All 5 of these would be approved on-site healthcare professionals: a medical doctor, a DO, a PA, an MP, and an AT. Those would be the 5 on-site healthcare professionals that could possibly do a skin checks of all the teams prior to an official or in place of an official. Be mindful that a doctor, a DO, a PA, or an NP, they are the ones who can complete the skin check forms. For communicable skin disease, an athletic trainer, we would not accept that because they are not capable of writing prescriptions for that communicable skin disease. So these are the approved healthcare professionals for return to play for concussions and also for on-site skin checks. But as far as your communicable skin disease form, an MD, a DO, a PA, and an NP are the only ones that we would accept filling that form out. Reminder to all coaches, any coach in the program, head, assistant, volunteer, whether they're there one day or every day, needs to do the concussion and sports video through the NFHSlearn.com. And course takes about 20 minutes. It's been updated in the last year or so. This is a requirement by the executive committee. Once you're done, print out your certificate and turn it into your athletic director to keep on file. A reminder to officials and to coaches, in the appendix of all your NFHS rule books, there's a suggested guideline for management of concussion in sports. please take time to review that. That's coming from the NFHS Medical Committee. Just take time to review and understand it in the event you have to deal with concussion during a match or prior to or post-match. Second course that coaches are required to take, again, this is for all coaches, is the heat illness prevention. This can be found too at nfhslearn.com. We ask that you all take time, go watch the course. When you're done, print the certificate out, turning in to your athletic director to keep on file. Remember, this is a required course by the executive committee of all coaches. New course this year is sudden cardiac arrest. This is the third course required by the executive committee. Again, this is just like the other two courses. It's required of all varsity head coaches, assistant coaches, sub-varsity coaches, middle school coaches, volunteers, coaches that are there one day a week, coaches that are there every day of the week. If they're coaching in your program in any capacity, they must take all three of these courses per the executive committee. Program that's not new, we talked about this last year with each sport. Anyone can save a life. Take time to visit the website, review the program they're putting together. In short, the program, the video you'll see when you go to their website simulates a young man and going into cardiac arrest in a PE class, and the students of that class having an idea of what to do when that cardiac arrest occurs. What we're asking all of our sports teams to do and coaches to do is spend time simulating a cardiac arrest and talking to your team about what would happen if someone went into cardiac arrest. As you well know, many of you practice in small rooms or in sections of your school that are not well traveled and are not around a lot of people, and especially if you're in there late on a Friday afternoon when the basketball teams are away, or on a Saturday morning by yourselves, or late in the evening with a couple people and a coach. If a coach goes into cardiac arrest, do your student athletes know what to do, and do they have the education of what to do in the event something like that were to happen to help you survive? So take time to simulate that. Assign duties. Make sure you talk and review of getting another adult involved, getting an athletic trainer, calling 911. Don't take anything for granted. We assume we all would call 911, but sometimes you never know what's going to go through the mind of a 16-year-old, especially in a panic situation. Take time, 5 minutes a day, 20 minutes a week. You could possibly save your life doing this. We highly encourage you all to do this and to put an emphasis on anyone can save a life. Ejections, reminders that schools must submit the report. Schools don't submit the report. The officials' report's the only report we will use. Athletes who are ejected are ineligible until cleared to play by the SCHSL office. If you are in a tournament that starts on Friday evening and runs through Saturday afternoon, and your student athlete were ejected on Friday evening, he is ineligible to continue to participate in that tournament. If you have two separate tournaments, maybe you go to one Friday and you're going to go to one Saturday, and they're ejected Friday, and you haven't heard anything from our office, it does not mean that they're cleared to play. They are ineligible until we have told your principal or athletic director that they are eligible to return, whether that's minimum 2-match suspension or 2 play date suspension, or multiple date suspension, or immediate return. They are ineligible until we have cleared them to play. Do not take a chance, because you're risking larger penalties for your program, larger penalties for the young man, and potentially larger penalties for you as a coach. Officials, if you have an ejection, you must submit the report. We're asked that both sides, officials and the schools, report facts, not opinions. Schools, in an effort to support your student athletes in the event of injection, we're encouraging you to video everything. Sometimes we would encourage, if you have the ability, video from multiple angles, especially in a sport like wrestling, where in one camera all you could see is 3 backs, based on the positioning of the bodies. So we're asking that if you have an opportunity, definitely video everything, but if you have an opportunity, to video from different angles if possible. As soon as we come with a ruling, will be sent to the principal as soon as possible. We had a very good year in terms overall of ejections last year in wrestling, and our highest percentage of ejections last year in wrestling were for biting. Coaches, we don't have any need for that in this sport or in any sport. But encourage your student athletes. That can't happen. We just don't need anybody to have a biting ejection during the school year. That's a common choice right there, and that's something that we're just not going to tolerate. Unsportsmanlike conduct continued. Coaches, an action that warrants an ejection for a coach. Remember your minimum next game suspension and the school to a minimum fine of $300. Coaches, remember in wrestling, whenever you see the term next game, for you, that is a play date. So if you have a Tuesday night duel and you were ejected from that duel and your next play date is a tournament that is a multi-day tournament, Friday, Saturday, you will miss that tournament completely as the head coach. The same would go for a player if that would consider a play date. Doesn't matter how many days. If it's considered one play day on your schedule, it's a play date in terms of ejections. And I understand that you could, a student athlete could end up missing 10 or 11 matches because of that versus 2. But at the same time, they're also capable of getting 60 to 80 matches throughout the course of a year. In many cases, they can get more. So the bottom line is, don't do anything to get ejected. Continue with unsportsmanlike conduct. Comments on social media. We're seeing an increased amount of comments on social media directed towards officials, directed towards the organization itself. Make your assistant coaches and your athletes aware of their social media comments and the implications they can carry. Pages 7 through 10 in the South Carolina High School League cover unsportsmanlike conduct. I would highly encourage all head coaches to spend some time reading through pages 7 through 10 so that you have a clear understanding of our unsportsmanlike conduct policies and stances. Coaches addressing players from the other team, we're going to treat this as a sportsmanship issue. This should not happen. We've had a couple issues in the last year or so where coaches of Team A are taking it upon themselves to address the athletes of Team B for whatever reason, but it's not to tell them good job, and it's not to tell them they're an outstanding competitor, and not for encouragement. These are issues that are sportsmanship issues, things that they're seeing and they want to address themselves. We're going to treat that as a sportsmanship issue for the coach. If you have a student athlete on the opponent's team who needs to be addressed for whatever issue, we ask that you go through the appropriate channel, which would be the official, once the match is started. If the match is pre-match or post-match, then we ask that you go to the game administration and let them handle it, or go to the other coach. What we don't need is coaches yelling at kids on the other team during contests or during tournaments. We want to put an emphasis on sportsmanship, make it a priority. We're starting to lose this a little bit. We've got to make this a priority in what we do. We're seeing a lot of kids make sure they're shaking hands when matches are over. Make sure when a tournament's over and they're getting medaled, if they lost their last match and they got to go get medaled, make sure they're coming back out to get on that podium to get medaled, even if they finished in second or third and are upset. Sportsmanship has got to be a priority. We had a number of kids last year in the state individual tournament that when they finished second or third in their medal, they did not come back out post-match to get their medal, and that's just very unfortunate. And it's truly a sportsmanship issue, and it's not very supportive of the sportsmanship spirit that we want in high school sports. So please make sportsmanship a priority. Emphasize this. We don't want them to stop competing. We don't want them to stop competing hard. We just want them to compete hard and compete well and be good sports about what they're doing. Some general wrestling reminders from the South Carolina High School League. Coaches, please see page 62 to 75 in the handbook for all your wrestling information. Our handbooks have changed a little bit this year, whereas it used to be each classification had a specific handbook with all your wrestling information in each one of those. Now all the wrestling information is general is in the rules and regulations. That's where you can find all your wrestling-specific rules and dates. Each classification's dual brackets will be in there, and that's pages 62 to 75. There may be some adjustments from where they were a couple months ago because your classifications had meetings this past fall, and any adjustments that they voted and passed in your brackets were updated specifically to your dates. If there is a specific issue in terms of classification that may have one difference over another, for example, 5A may have a specific rule when it comes to wrestling that 4 or 3A does not have, that would be under the 5A handbook under wrestling. So take time to read through both your classification handbook for your sport, and most importantly, all the rules and regulations in page 62 to 75. Reminder about scales. Make sure your scales are certified. If you're going to have a tournament, the home team can determine how many and which scales will be used for tournaments. And it's just a reminder that the referee can or could disqualify a scale that's not within 0.2 of a pound of each other for a tournament. That's just to try to keep the validity of the scale so that you're not, one scale would have you in the weight class but another one wouldn't. Just to keep them consistent, and that could be done by the referee. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Coaches, a reminder of the bench area during duels and individuals. Just want to point some things out that I witnessed a little bit last year. Be mindful of who all is in your bench area during your duel matches. I went to several duel matches last year where there were, 22 wrestlers on the team, 6 coaches, and 4 or 5 other male individuals standing behind the bench area at a duel match. I don't think we're in situations where we have 9 and 10 coaches at wrestling programs in our state. I understand bringing your entire team. I certainly understand bringing JV wrestlers to sit and watch on the bench to get the experience during the playoffs. But be mindful of the individuals, especially fathers who are standing behind your bench during duels. We don't need that. In no other sport in our state do we have dads and extra people hanging on behind our benches and watching. And again, I'm not saying everybody's guilty, but just be mindful of these things, because all you need is one of those people to yell something at the official who thinks it's you or thinks it's an assistant, and you don't want anything assessed on you for something that you didn't do or you can't control. So if they're not a part of your coaching staff, if they're not a part of your team, if they're not a trainer, don't have them in your bench area. Have them in the stands during dual matches. During individual tournaments, make sure you're mindful of how many coaches you have in the corner for each kid. I watched the state tournament last year. You're usually asked to keep 3 or more coaches on the floor. There were several programs, many programs that had 4, 5, 6, and some of them had 7 coaches walking around the floor during the individual state finals. It gets very congested down there, but it's very alarming when you see programs with 6 coaches walking around. And I witnessed it last year, 6 coaches and 2 kids wrestling at the same time. One kid had 4 coaches in his corner. The other kid had none, both in the same program. And the program's walking around with 6 coaches all weekend, and a kid's wrestling over there with no coach in his corner, but yet we're carrying 6 on the floor. So be mindful of these things. These are just a few observations that I saw, and we can clean these up and make some things a little more effective and help each other out. That would be awesome. New thing this year, a wrestling rule reminder. In the past, if you had 3 or less qualifiers for the individual finals, you could partner up with other schools that had 3 or less qualifiers. However, this is no longer the case. No longer, if you have 3 or less qualifiers, can you work with another school during the weeks leading up to the individual state tournament. The reason for that is it's an open season. At the end of the state championship duels, it becomes an open season for your sport. Thus, you can use your own athletes. You can bring your wrestlers that are no longer in the state tournament back out. You can bring any other student athlete in your school out to wrestle, male or female, during that time. So there's no need to go to another school to find somebody in a similar weight class. You should have those readily available in your area to do, because it's an open season. Remember, the day after the championship, which is the state tournament, the dual tournament, it's an open season. And rule books can be purchased online as well as through our office. I think they're like $6 if you go to the nfhs.org/ebooks. 2017 NFHS Wrestling Rule Change Proposal Form. It's due on March 1st, 2017. This can be done online through the National Federation at nfhs.org. Please make sure that you take time to, if you have an interest in writing a rule proposal, a rule change proposal, please go online and do that by March 1st. For all coaches and officials, NFHS rule books can be bought as ebooks through your mobile devices, your tablets, and for your laptops and computers as well. Readily available, especially if you have them on your phones. You can adjust the viewing size, easy to navigate, and easy to search through the book and look for terms or words. And this is available in all sports, so I would encourage you to buy one as well as have a hard copy as well. Okay, now we head to the 2016-17 NFHS Wrestling Rules Changes. Rule change is Rule 5-11-2I for near fall. When a defensive wrestler commits a technical violation, applies an illegal hold maneuver, or commits a necessary roughness or unsportsmanlike act during a near fall or imminent near fall, the offensive wrestler shall be awarded a penalty point in addition to the near fall point. I'd like to point out the play picks. Play pick A would demonstrate the imminent near fall situation or potential near fall situation along with the defensive wrestler committing an unsportsmanlike or necessary roughness act. The offensive wrestler in this case would be awarded a penalty point. However, correction, the penalty point would be play pick C. And the near fall points would be play pick B. That is a correction that came from the National Federation. In this rule, the old rule, the near fall points, if were awarded if the referee obviously had to stop the action due to a violation by the defensive wrestler. If it could have been corrected, no points were awarded for that near fall. So now this rule by the rule committee, this rule added, it allows the official at the next clock stoppage to award those points even if the match is not stopped right away due to the violation. So if a defensive wrestler who's in a near fall situation commits a technical violation or applies an illegal hold or maneuver to try to, basically if you're trying to get out of the near fall by doing something illegal, the offensive wrestler can get the penalty points and the near fall points as well. This slide shows you what this rule would look like in the rule book as written. That's Rule 5-11-2I. Remember, this is a new rule. But this would show you exactly what it would look like in the rule book under letter I. Remember that A through H would remain the exact same. I want to remind all officials to make sure that you effectively communicate with the scores tables so that we can record the score effectively. We don't want to have any issues with recording these scores. Make sure that we are getting these points awarded correctly and that we're having effective communication with the tables. Next rule change, Rule 7-2-2G. I want to point out that this rule has always been in place, except for it hasn't exactly been written specifically this way. They've added a new, under 7-2-2, they've added letter G. This was always covered under potentially dangerous as other general potentially dangerous maneuvers. But the Rules Committee felt it was significant enough to have its own rule under potentially dangerous holds or maneuvers. Anytime you deal with a situation of safety or student-athlete safety, it becomes a strong point of emphasis, especially in terms of the rules covering them. So The committee felt it was important and significant enough to make it its own rule, so we now have it in. When a wrestler from a standing position is placed in a body lock with one or both arms trapped and then is lifted and is unable to use his arms or break the fall, it will be ruled potentially dangerous by rule. Once that young man, the defensive wrestler, is lifted and both of his arms are locked, the referee in our state should immediately stop the match and call potentially dangerous. There shouldn't be any hesitation. No risk of allowing the offensive wrestler to take him to the mat with a slam without the student athlete having the opportunity to break his fall with at least one arm. And a reminder that if he is taken and slammed, a slam or unnecessary roughness could be called if he is taken down with both arms pinned, if he's lifted. Okay. Repeatedly placing your opponent in potentially dangerous, it could be called illegal. So make sure, coaches, we're not teaching our students to repeatedly do this to get them back down on the ground, because it could be called illegal. This slide shows you exactly how it looks in the rule book under 7-2-2. This is G and H. H is, remember, the other holds maneuvers which may cause injury when used illegally. That's where we were before. This rule will be underneath that before. A through F remains the same. G, when a wrestler stands with one or both arms trapped, and other holds maneuvers. So remember, it's potentially dangerous if you have both arms trapped. In our state, in South Carolina, once they're lifted off with both arms trapped, we should stop the match for potentially dangerous. In essence, this is staying the same. And remember the emphasis on the wrestler standing with arms trapped. Okay, so this is essentially the same rule that's always been there, but the essence, but the emphasis with the wrestler standing and the arms trapped. That's it for your rule changes for 2016-17. Now on to the editorial changes in the rule book. A couple things to point out to everyone prior to going into the editorial change on 2-1-5. Please take a minute to note that there's an editorial change after the publication of these books. Under Rule 722G in the case book, case play 7-2-3, it is incorrect. Please make a note. Scratch through 7-2-3. Please make a note that that is incorrect. Just go ahead and scratch through it. And the comment on the rules of the arm trap is incorrect. So that is in your case book. Make a note. 7-2-3 are incorrect, and the comments of the rules of the arm trap are incorrect on that casebook play. So please do not rely on that casebook play. Otherwise, you will be enforcing that rule incorrectly. All right, Rule 2-1-5, the mat area. Basically, what they've done is they've added in that where facilities permit to the body of the rule. They did this for clarity. The rule's been there, but they put this, I think it was at the end prior to this year. They've moved that into the body because they felt like it was adding clarity when it was put in the middle of the rule. Rule 4-1-3, the wrestler's uniform editorial change. If the shoes have the laces, they basically added this in there for clarity. Remind the laces, you can't just double knot the laces. They must be either taped to the shoe or secured by a locking device on the wrestling shoe in an acceptable fashion. And that is, of course, if they have laces. If there are no laces, obviously you have nothing to tape down or to lock down. Again, that's put in there for clarity. Rule 4-1-4, the wrestler's uniform. Again, this was added for clarity. The ear guards designed by the manufacturer for the sport of wrestling that are rigid and padded. That's just a clarity issue. I wanted to point out one thing that came from the National Federation is there is a new wrestling helmet that has apparently hit the market, and there is a company, I believe the manufacturer is out of the New York area, They are claiming that they have NFHS approval and they are compliant with all NFHS rules, and they have NFHS approval. I want to point this out for that new wrestling helmet, that is not correct. The National Federation has never seen the product. They've never even seen the testing results for the product. They've never seen any information on the product other than what the manufacturer claims has already been approved. And so the National Federation has asked us to share with you all that if you get anything regarding a new wrestling helmet that's out there, a new product that's out there, please check through our office to make sure that it's approved, or check with the National Federation because there's a company that's claiming they're approved and are not. Remember, the ear guards should be designed by the manufacturer for the sport of wrestling. Okay. Editorial change 5-16, the map. Again, they added where facilities permit to the body of this. From the end of this, it was at the end of this rule, they've added to the body, and their purpose there was clarity. 2016-17 National Federation rules, points of emphasis. Reminder, these things have already been in the rule book. They are nothing new. They are just an emphasized point that the National Federation Rules Committee for Wrestling feels that we need to make sure we're taking time to emphasize and to put a lot of emphasis on throughout the course of the season. Apparently there's states that are not emphasizing it. Of course, with your communicable skin diseases and any health issues, it's always a positive to have reminders to emphasize those things. Your communicable skin disease, skin conditions, and skin checks. Reminder, before a dual meet begins, the referee shall perform skin checks or verify skin checks have been performed by a designated on-site meet health care professional that is appropriate. Reminder, in absence of that appropriate health care professional on site, that the referee can do those skin checks. Referees and officials, I just remind you the liability that you're taking if you ask the coaches to do it and take their word for it prior to a match beginning. You are really risking the health of all involved, including yourself that are on that mat, but of all the wrestlers that will be going on that mat that night. Not only their health, but you're also putting yourself in a very litigious situation when you just take the word of others for it. Please make sure that if it's not the trainer, that you were the one that performed that check, or if it's not another medical appropriate healthcare professional that approved that check, you're the one that's doing it. Reminder that the communicable skin conditions and skin checks before a dual meet begins, the referee or the designated on-site appropriate healthcare professional is the one that verifies the skin checks are performed. And reminder, if it's not done, you're skipping it, you're endangering someone's health that could be yours as well. Slide is emphasis that before the tournament begins each day, skin checks shall be performed as well, just like in a dual meet. That should be done each day of a tournament as well. Reminder to coaches that on-site healthcare professional can override the skin lesion form that was approved, even if it was a family doctor 2 days before. If that on-site healthcare professional is not comfortable with what he sees in that young man going out there to wrestle, then he can deny him the opportunity to move out there. It's unfortunate, and it's not a situation that you wish to happen for anyone, but at the same time, when it comes to someone's health, when in doubt, we have to sit them out. It's imperative that all referees perform the skin checks or verify they've been done. If you have a question, referees, please ask to see their forms that have cleared them to play from their approved medical care professional. And a reminder, that form needs to be current. And in our minds, current would be somewhere within the last 7 days. If it was performed on December the 14th and you're at a match on January the 16th, the doctor has circled that skin lesion was cleared and it was over a month ago, that would certainly not be considered current. Current for us would be sometime within the last 7 days. Again, if you feel like what you're seeing is a health risk or health hazard, then you would have the ability to sit that athlete out, regardless of what that form says. As you can see, with this being the 5th slide on it, the communicable skin conditions and skin checks are a big emphasis with the National Federation this year. But one of the things I wanted to point out was one of the keys to preventing is how we clean. They recommend a solution of 1 to 100 bleach and water on appropriate commercial or an appropriate commercial cleaner. They pointed out during our national rules presentation that 1 to 100 bleach to water is not going to clean it thoroughly as much as just clean the top surface. So make sure if you have access to a commercial cleaner, do that as well. But certainly keep those mats clean. Rules Committee wanted to emphasize the word control as it is in the sport. The very essence of wrestling is the word control. There are 3 phases: gaining, losing, or changing. It's very important that the official is able to recognize when each phase transitions to another phase. Not only is it a rule change, it's also a point of emphasis this year. The arm trap, the real standing position with the defensive wrestler arm or arms trapped while he or she's lifted off his feet, it should be considered potentially dangerous. Remember, this is a risk the wrestlers return to the mat, and they do not have any use of their arms to break, and a serious injury could occur. Remember, the highest priority for the offensive wrestler is to return the wrestler to the mat in a controlled fashion, and the priority is for the wrestler to control his opponent, and for the observing official to see that control. We go back to the slide before, where control is the very essence of wrestling. Another point of emphasis is wrestler conduct. Coaches and referees, we ask that you be at the forefront in promoting good sportsmanship. This is not coming from the high school league as much as it's coming from the National Federation. So while we're pushing at our level, it's being pushed for the National Federation as well. We want to try to eliminate profanity among the athletes, even if it's not directed at anyone. That's something I hear a lot. Well, he didn't direct it at anybody. The fact that you're using profanity, we need to work those things back out of high school sports. We're allowing our student athletes to get away with things that they weren't allowed to get away with 20 and 25 years ago. So we need to bring sportsmanship back and make it a point of emphasis. Officials, we ask that you help us as well in reminding coaches prior to the match about sportsmanship and the wrestler conduct as well. Continue with sportsmanship and good sporting behavior being a point of emphasis. Coaches, we ask, the Federation Rules Committee are asking that you and the officials work together. And remember that each match is an opportunity to teach life lessons. Coaches who model good and appropriate behavior will send a positive message to student athletes and spectators. And remember that the positive values learned will serve the students long after their wrestling careers have ended. Coaches can't emphasize enough the third point. How you handle yourself and how you model yourself is going to be followed by your student athletes. We told the schools earlier this year we had 33 coaches ejected last year, and out of those 33, I think 21 of those coaches had an athlete ejected on their team as well. Your student athletes follow your lead, and if you're a positive role model and demonstrating appropriate behavior, you're going to send that message, and your athletes will follow. As I know that many of you in South Carolina have concerns about the state of wrestling and the growth of wrestling in South Carolina, the state of high school wrestling across the country from the National Federation, the Rules Committee is very concerned about the participation decline across the country. This is not isolated to one area. This is not just in our state. This is across the country. There is a decline. They think they've identified some contributing factors. The following factors they think could be a reason why there's a participation decline: concussions, the traditional uniform preferences, skin conditions, reduced or lack of home matches, overuse, and possibly the current conditions with young people having so many other options to occupy their time and energy. The Rules Committee is going to continue to investigate what other factors could be creating barriers to keep student athletes from wrestling, and work from a rules writing perspective to help make changes that could possibly encourage participation. And the committee is encouraging local coaches to work with their school administration to address these issues the best they can at all levels, and hope they can turn this decline into an increase and welcome more young people into the sport of wrestling. National Federation of High Schools Officials Association, the Central Hub. Officials, you can refer to these slides and this hub for any of your official needs from the Federation. This hub, you have your sport information. You also have rules library and rules information. You have searchable rules book, video content on officiating the sport and competition situations, and interpretation. So we encourage all of our officials to go through and to look at the Officials Association Central Hub for Wrestling. Coaches, it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to go through as well. It could possibly help you in terms of communicating with your officials. And of course, there's officials education course and videos. We encourage you to go to those that hub and take time. You never is a time where as an official that you can't use it to get better. So we encourage you all to go and take this time to watch these videos and to try to improve on your craft. That's the end of our rules presentation for the 2016-17 wrestling season. I want to thank you all for what you do for the sport of wrestling. I want to thank you all for what you do for the young people of South Carolina. We ask that you display great sportsmanship and have a wonderful 2016 and 17 season. And if we can do anything in our office to help, don't hesitate to call.